The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brooks Show.
All right, everybody, welcome. Welcome to Yaron Brooks Show on this Thursday evening. It is the 3rd of February, and I am excited. You know, one of the things you learn in life is you got to experiment. You got to try things out. A lot of stuff fails. You just got to keep trying and keep doing different things, or you got to let people experiment to try stuff. I've been letting Action Jackson just try stuff. Mostly I say yes to his ideas. Not always, but mostly. And this 1-minute video thing, which I would have poo-pooed if he'd ever even asked me about it, luckily he didn't, is just taken off. It is super exciting to watch. I mean, I don't know who these people are, but hundreds of them are becoming subscribers to the show. Now, it'll be a while before they move on to the longer videos, I hope. We'll see. But I don't know what other choice, right? Alternative is to pick up subscribers. But right now, hundreds of them are moving over. I think yesterday we had over 130,000 views on the channel. That's typically what we get in a month, in one day. Today's going to match that, if not, going to increase that. We will be at 30,000 sometime by the end of the weekend, early next week, if this continues. Who knows? I have no idea. The other thing that's interesting is the first video that kind of went viral. This is all on YouTube. So I looked at the videos on TikTok, and they're doing nothing because I don't think YouTube is a particularly intellectual channel. Sorry, I don't think TikTok is a particularly intellectual channel. YouTube is. But they're just going, so one of them went like this, and it's up to 150,000 views. Then, yesterday, another video on capitalism, me, answering a question on capitalism, all 1 minute, right? Overtook the previous one and is now climbing up. It's over 50,000 and it's going to the 150. And they follow the same path. Nothing for days. And then it starts picking up, then it starts picking up, and then it goes exponential, it goes straight up. And it's just phenomenal. Just phenomenal. And so I'm excited. This has never happened to the channel before. I mean, we've had a lot of subscriber pickup. First time we did Dave Rubin, first time we did Lex Friedman, and all of that was great. But never have I seen it come from anything I've done, any content where I'm, that I produced, or and it's amazing. It really is amazing, and it's great. And I don't know if it's sustainable. I don't know if it continues. And we want to see if those people start consuming the longer stuff, start supporting the channel. That still hasn't happened. But I was expecting to get to 30,000 May. And we're going to be there, 30,000 subscribers. I thought May. I mean, we've had a horrible time getting subscribers at the end of last year and early January. And, the appearance on Lex Friedman helped. That got it up a little bit. And then it's taken off. We're getting over 200 a day yesterday. I think today is going to be over 200, maybe 250. We'll see. There's still 4 hours to the day as it is counted on my channel on YouTube. But yeah, that'll get us to 30,000 in 3 days. So first week of February, it will be at 30,000 instead of May, June, who knows? Wow. So here's for 1 minute videos. I mean, I don't get it. I don't see why anybody watches them. I don't understand it. What I'm saying in many respects doesn't make any sense because it's completely detached from context. Hopefully some of them are clicking to the lectures where these are taking out from so they can hear the whole context. I don't know, but they're subscribing. At least some people are subscribing. And there are no cats in the videos. Like, I'm sure if Action Jackson found a way to put a cat in the video, God, I mean, who knows how, I shouldn't give him ideas. I mean, I'm sure he's testing it out right now as I speak to see if he can implant some cats into the videos in order to increase the, whatever it takes to get subscribers. I am excited. These are all hard-hitting, gotcha 1 minutes that, intellectually make no sense and are completely out of context and are too short and all of that. But I'll take it because every single graph on my charts, except revenue, every single graph on my charts, like views, watch time is not growing that fast because these are 1 minute videos, but subscribers, they're all exponential right now. So, what is it? I don't know. Here we come, maybe if we get the cats into it, maybe we can get to that million person mark. That's where we need to be, right? Let's just hit the 100,000. 30 in a few days, and then to infinity and beyond, something like that. Which reminds me, infinity reminds me that I just started David Deutsch's book. I'm sure Wanda Friedman is really, really happened, but I'm listening to chapter 1. I'm listening to it of David Deutsch's book, which has infinity in the title. I forget what the title is now. So far, I'm disagreeing with a lot of it, so I'm waiting for the good stuff to start. But chapter 1, which is the theoretical foundation, I'm in big disagreements. But so it's going to be fun to listen to the whole book and see where I agree and where I don't. Because I have so many people who listen to this channel, or The Beginning of Infinity is the name of the book. Thank you, Wanda Freeman. A number of the people listening to this channel really a big David Deutsch fans. And so I'm reading it to get a sense of why and how and all of that. And we'll see. I'm skeptical because I'm skeptical about Papa, who is a huge influence on Deutsch. But I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to try to read the whole thing or listen to the whole thing. And chapter 1 is difficult for me because it's frustrating. There's a lot of good in it, but the fundamentals, the core philosophical stuff, I disagree with. All right, that's what I'm doing, reading David Deutsch books and watching my graphs, watching the graphs go up. And to the extent that you guys can help, share, do whatever to get us to 30,000 and beyond, please do so. I am excited about that. If you want to ask questions, including about whether I like cats or dogs or anything like that, you can use the super chat. You can use the super chat. That's how we do things here. I encourage you to sign up. I encourage you to use the super chat, ask questions. So far, Catherine is like, "What's going on? What's going on? It's never this slow." Our goal is $600, as you know. $20 or more get priority, so feel free, jump in, and we will answer super chat questions later in the show. We will do that. All right. Let's jump into this topic. Heavy topic. So over the last week, we've gotten this flurry of, people being upset, attempts to cancel, people, just freaking out over issues that relate to race. Frank, thank you. Not Frank. Stephen, thank you. Really appreciate it. We have Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan talking about shades of black and what does black even mean. I'll show you the video clip of that. People are freaking out. It turns out that a lot of musicians are leaving Spotify, not because of COVID, but they're leaving Spotify because of this 1 minute segment that I will show you on Joe Rogan. We got President Biden announcing to the world that he intends his next nominee to be a black woman. That's it, a black woman. Best black woman he can find, nominee for the Supreme Court. Not the best judge, not the best person, not the most ideologically sound, whatever his ideology is. No, it's going to be a black woman. And of course, this is not the first time we had presidents say, and I think Trump said this, that he wants to nominate a woman, and we've had nominate an African American, and now it's this particular category. And we had Ilya Shapiro. Ilya Shapiro, who I'll talk about Ilya in a little while, comment on that. And because of a ill-worded tweet, is now on administrative leave while an investigation is being mounted. And as if you have to investigate, the tweet is like only so many characters. You could figure out what it says. So Ilya is now, and I know Ilya, and he's a good guy, and he has now kind of been, and there's a sit-in, this is in Georgetown University, a sit-in to demand that he just be fired and kicked out. And then, just if you thought things weren't crazy enough, and then Whoopi Goldberg on The View, on The View, said something about the Holocaust not really being about race, because it wasn't about black and white. And then she apologized and she said, well, when I think about race, the context is black and white, and I know people offended, and I apologize. And she is being put on leave, forced leave from The View for 2 weeks, and she's in a flurry, furious about this. She's been canceled. How dare they cancel Whoopi Goldberg? And she is threatening to leave The View. There's a tragedy for you. And all of this, are Jews a race? How black is black to be counted as black? Should we be associating Supreme Court justice nominees with a color of skin? All of this is just insanity. Insanity. And brings to the forefront the whole question of, what is race? Does it exist? Is it important? Why does it matter? Is Whoopi right? Maybe the Holocaust wasn't about race. Well, certainly wasn't about skin color. Or is Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan right? And in a sense, they don't say this, race is a fiction. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and all in the context of, and I want to say this up front, and I'll repeat this as we go, because I think it's important. And the important context here is that discrimination against people of different skin color, discrimination against people with a different, ethnic background and religious background, are real things, horrific things, evil things. And that people justifiably are very sensitive around these issues because there's a long history of discriminating against people with dark skin, of discriminating against Jews. Racism, that is, whether you believe that race exists or not, attributing importance to other people's biological attributions that have nothing to do with their character or intelligence as individuals, that is evil and disgusting and horrible, but it has existed. It is a real phenomena. So our race, in my view, is not a real phenomena. It's a made-up thing. Racism is a real phenomenon. And one that I can understand why people are sensitive about it, because 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. African Americans were enslaved for well over 100 years. And even when they're not enslaved, they were horrifically discriminated against. So it's real. It's real and needs to be acknowledged as such. But there is a question. There is a question. What does race even mean? What is it? What are the borders? What distinguishes? And what is its importance? Now, one's background is important for a variety of reasons. For example, health-wise, where you come from, or even where your ancestors come from, or the group they belong to has importance, because there's certain diseases that are in group, there's certain phenomena that are associated with that. So for health, it's important, but for what else? For what else? So healthcare should take into account your genes, your genetic makeup. And healthcare should take into account, who your ancestors were. But that doesn't define a race. Indeed, if you consider Jews a race, well, some diseases are associated with European Jews, but are not associated with North African Jews or Central Asian Jews. So what matters for those diseases is not that you're Jewish, but that you're Jewish and that you're from Europe. Is that a sub-race of the broader race? It just all doesn't matter. And categorizing things as race is useless. So, absolutely, your genes matter, particularly for medicine. Maybe only for medicine. I don't know for what else. That's pretty stupid and disgusting, Richard. God. Where do these people come from who think they can... I'm not even going to repeat it because it's despicable and disgusting and stupid. Stupid. Yes, I am, because that's what you write statements like that, that's what you deserve. It's exactly what you deserve. So yeah, your genes matter for help. For what else? What else do your genes matter for? I mean, to other people. To you they matter, right? But to other people, what do they matter for? For nothing. for nothing. Race was not really an idea, a concept. It was a word used in the English language going back to the 16th century, but as a category, to categorize people, not by genes, not by features. It's only in the 18th century and the 19th century that the concept of race as we know it today developed. And even then, it was much broader or much more narrower, if you will, than the way we think about it today. For example, there were thinkers in England who were trying to figure out among the English which groups among the English produced the geniuses and the successes and the success stories, and therefore were inherently as groups superior to others, and they should be the aristocrats and they should get privileges and all kinds of things like that. So, trying to categorize little groups, not for the purpose of just understanding, what does this culture provide, what does that culture, the genetics of it, and so on. But to actually give some people privilege, some people positions, to discriminate against individuals based on which group they belong to. Now, Ayn Rand correctly said that racism is the most primitive form of collectivism, in a sense, the ugliest form of collectivism, the most mindless form of collectivism. And in the 19th century, they were trying to categorize people all over the place. So white people were categorized among other things. Marx talks about the Slavic race as something we want to get rid of and it's not very good. Right? And yeah, the Germans, a lot of this stuff was being done in America, sadly. The eugenics movement, a lot of the eugenics movements was initiated or developed and grew substantially in early 20th century America. Germany jumped all over this, partially to try to inspire their own sense of worthiness out of their inferiority complex, to try to justify their superiority in the world. And they started defining all the other races, including defining Jews as a race. Jews have always been discriminated against for a million different reasons. The Nazis defined them as a race. And defined all kinds of other people as races. And none of that matters. None of it matters. The fact that one group has an IQ on average higher than another group matters zero, nothing, zilch, to evaluating any particular individual from that group. Not to mention the problems with IQ tests, which I'm not going to get into today, the problems up the kazoo of IQ tests. Why the interest even? Why the interest in evaluating IQs of groups? Who cares? Why does it matter? What importance does it have? Who benefits from it? Only the racists. Nobody else. Only the racists. An individual's level of intelligence is important to the extent that IQ measures it. Intelligent tests are important for hiring, important for evaluating candidates for graduate work, for students. But I can tell you that my wife has a higher IQ than I do. There's no question about that. She scores off the charts on IQ tests. And she is not an Ashkenazi Jew. She is part of the inferior group that Richard is referring to, inferior in quotes, group of Sephardic Jews. So what difference does it make if on average her group scores less? It's just an excuse for people to behave badly. It's just an excuse for people to be racist. It's just an excuse for people to find justifications that validate their biases to begin with. So, I don't think race exists. I think it's a bogus concept. I think it's a bogus idea. I think it's an invalid concept. I think it aggregates, right? Concepts are supposed to be improve our efficiency. They're supposed to make us more efficient thinkers. They're supposed to take a multitude of observations and identify something that's in common, but there's nothing important in common here. And then, of course, in America, at least in 21st century America, racism has come to only mean, or race has come to only mean, the difference between white and black. That is the only meaning of the concept of race, is not the subtle differences that the Nazis found in different people, the subtle differences that a British race theorists of the 19th century found in different people, but black versus white versus brown, skin color, which is even more stupid and barbaric. Because skin color means nothing. Zero, zilch. I mean, as I told you, the most successful immigrant group to the United States today, the most successful immigrant group to the United States today in terms of salaries, wages, in terms of education, education achievement, educational attainment, by far, is the blackest immigrant group. That is the Nigerians. So what does it mean that some people with some skin color test differently than people with other skin color? And who the hell cares? So it's disgusting, despicable. This elevation of race, the importance placed on race. And this is everywhere in the political spectrum. This is left and right. This is people using color of skin for victimhood and for special rights and for special privileges and for Supreme Court seats, grievances. I mean, historically justified. But the solution is not more emphasis on skin color, more focus on the unimportant, the insignificant. Right? It's just truly, truly horrific. And this is reinforced by things like, let's nominate a black female to the Supreme Court. Yes, there are no black females on the Supreme Court right now. Now, maybe some of that is racism. Maybe the origins of some of that is discrimination from the past. Maybe there were highly qualified women, more qualified than anybody else, who were black and who were not nominated because of the bigotry of the time. But you don't solve that bigotry. You don't solve that bigotry by being a bigot, by making skin color, by making sex the determining factor. Now, this is how Ilya Shapiro got in trouble. Because Ilya Shapiro put out a tweet that basically said, look, the most qualified liberal appeals court judge who should be nominated to the Supreme Court is a woman, and her name is Sari Srinivasan. And Ilya Shapiro, who is call him a libertarian, I think, said, if you are a progressive liberal, the judge that is most qualified, that has going to be the best for you as a liberal Democrat, would be Sri Srinivasan. And she happens to be Indian or Sri Lankan, in terms of skin color, pretty dark. But she doesn't count. She can't be nominated to the Supreme Court. She will not be placed on the Supreme Court, even though she's the most qualified candidate, not by skin color, not by sex, but by ideology and objective qualifications for legal scholars. She won't because she's not black enough. She won't because she's not black from the right side of the world. She won't because her people were not enslaved, at least not in America. Who knows what was done to them in previous generations in India or wherever it is she comes from. But this is the insanity of racism. She is Chelanese, so off the coast of India. Chelanese. I'm not sure Chelanese is. I'm sure they're. I don't know what culture. I mean, culturally, they're probably very much like India. I don't know. That would be interesting. I don't know much about the people in Ceylon, Sri Lanka. But my point is, who cares? Who cares where exactly she come from? What matters is her qualifications. Okay, Sri Lanka is Ceylon. Thank you, Wanda Freeman. I appreciate that. I suspected that, but I'm glad, I wasn't going to say it. I'm glad you qualified that. Tamil culture, I'm told, is the culture of South India, which is Sri Lankan. But it doesn't matter. She's an American. I don't know if she was born in America, but she's an American and an enormously qualified judge. And she won't go to the Supreme Court, not because of anything she has done, said, written, not because she's not qualified. She's the most qualified, at least according to Ilya Shapiro, but because she's not from Africa. Well, that's not even true, because her ancestors are not from Africa. We live in a sick culture that produces this kind of result. Now, unfortunately for Ilya, and Ilya, is just to give you a sense of who Ilya is, he is a legal scholar. He has worked for the Cato Institute for many years. He has just been appointed the executive director of the Georgetown Center for the Constitution, which is a very prestigious position. Georgetown is a top law school, and of course, in the heart of DC. And Ilya's a great guy. I follow him on Twitter. I follow a lot of his stuff. He's a good guy, super smart. I don't agree with him on everything, but he's super smart and really interesting. So he said, in a series of tweets, he criticized Joe Biden's pledge to consider only black women for the soon vacant Supreme Court. And in the course of arguing that this Judge Siri, whose name I can't pronounce, would be far and away the best pick for Biden, Shapiro tweeted, and this was his big, this is how he got into trouble. Shapiro tweeted, but alas, he doesn't fit into the latest intersectionality hierarchy, so we'll get lesser black woman. Now, what he means here is, I guess Siri is a man. So I thought it was a woman. Okay, so it's a man from Sri Lanka is this appellate court judge. I thought it was a woman for some reason. Anyway, what got him in trouble was we'll get a lesser black woman. Now, Ilya is not arguing that black women are lesser. He's arguing here, what he's saying here is that the best candidate of all, of any color skin, which is a bizarre way to put it, for a progressive leftist is Sri, this guy Sri, right? And as a consequence of that, you're going to get somebody lesser, who's a black woman, not because black women are lesser, but because Biden has said he'll only choose a black woman. But you can see how this is easily misunderstood, and Shapiro knew this and deleted his tweet quickly and apologized for it and did all the right things, but it was too late, too late. The dean of the law school flipped out, students flipped out, they piled on Shapiro. They called him a racist, which is, if you know anything about Ilya Shapiro and you followed his work, you know that is ludicrous. He was placed on the day, today he was supposed to start, on Tuesday he was supposed to start as the executive director of this new center. He was placed on administrative leave. There's going to be an investigation about whether he violated the policies and expectations of professional conduct and so on. All because some people chose to read a tweet that he wrote in a way that is clearly not intended, and that he criticized Biden's choices. Now, this is Georgetown University. Georgetown University, a university that took no discriminatory action in 2018, when a feminist professor said, and I'm quoting, that entitled white men who supported Supreme Court nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, but the entitled white men deserve miserable deaths while we castrate their corpses and feed them to the swine. Indeed, when some students demanded something be done about this professor, Georgetown went out of their way to defend that female professor's free speech rights. So you can call white men, you can claim they deserve death, and you can describe how you're going to castrate them and feed their corpses to swine, and that's okay. But to argue for a colorblind Supreme Court, to argue for a president to choose the most qualified candidate rather than the candidate who has a particular color skin, and even there, a particular heritage with a particular color skin, because who knows if Sri is more black or less black than whoever Biden ultimately nominates. That deserves condemnation. I mean, this is just unbelievable. And this is not idiots. This is the dean of the Georgetown University Law Center. It is absurd and ridiculous. Right? By the way, just to give you a sense of the students who are demanding that Shapiro be fired, they're claiming that they've been hurt, and they've demanded catered food, and they want a space in which to cry while conducting a sit-in demanding that he be fired. The dean has told them that he's going to find a place for them to cry, don't worry, and whatever food they order in, the school will reimburse them. I mean, we've gone so soft as a culture. Sit-ins should be illegal. Never mind giving them a safe space to cry and providing them with food. Amy Wax is not good. Amy Wax is a racist of the right. They are racist of the right. And Wax is at Penn Law. And she is horrible. She is horrible. And this is the problem. That if you're going to have racist of the left, you're going to get racist of the right. And to a large extent, the racists of the left are a response to the racists of the right. And generally, you have racists on all sides. Amy Wax's attitude towards immigrants, the way she talks about immigrants, what she says about immigrants is disgusting and despicable. And yes, deserves the title of racist. I would have nothing to do with her. I wouldn't fire her, but I wouldn't have anything to do with her. Let me show you this segment from Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. I mean, this is the crazy world in which we live. This is the kind of stuff that we're getting to, the kind of attitude, the kind of stuff that we're deteriorating to because of this obsession with race that appears to be on all sides. All right, I'm going to play you, this is, it's 1 minute long, so we're going to play this. Oops. No, we're not. We're going to
of intolerance and bigotry and anger and hateful
sexual oppression.
What did Michael
prejudice,
Eric Dyson call you? A mean angry white man?
And a mean, angry white man. Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not mean at all.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what's dumb about that statement. It's you're not mean at all. It's
I am white. Actually, that's a...
But that's part of the problem. Once you start calling people angry white people, identifying them by their skin color, and making a deal out of people's skin color, well, they're going to respond. And now skin color becomes a thing. It gains importance. It gains currency. And now you get into stupid discussions like this.
lie, too. I'm kind of tan.
So am I white? How tanned am I? Am I more tanned when I'm in Puerto Rico than when I'm in Toronto, Canada? Does tanning count? How dark is dark? What is white?
He was actually not
If
black.
you're tan,
He was
what
sort
the
of
fuck am
brown.
I?
And he's not black now? So Dyson's not black, he's just brown? Is black just a figurative to coming from some ancestry in Africa? How much blackness counts as black?
Because I'm darker than you.
Yeah, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yeah, now Joe is dark, so maybe Joe's not white, but what is white? Who qualifies? Where do we set the criteria? Is there pigment meter? Is there a meter that defines who's white, who's black? The whole thing is stupid. You know, in Brazil, for a long time, if you, I think to this day, if you have one, they talk about blood, right? 1 ounce of white blood. If you have one white ancestor, you're considered white. In America, if you have one black ancestor, you're considered black. But all of that is bullshit. We're all mutts to some degree or another, and it doesn't matter. It makes no difference. It's insignificant. It has no meaning.
Neither of us are white.
Well, I'm Italian.
And he was
mostly.
brown.
Yeah, Italian whites, certainly the British didn't think so. They categorized them as a different race, and they were dark-skinned, and they were looked down upon.
Brown, not black.
Well,
So Zhao says it's not exactly like that. But that, you know, it's somewhat like that. It's not exactly like that, but it's somewhat like that. Where do you define? Where's the boundary? What defines you? On what side?
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's
This,
really
the
weird.
black and white thing is so strange
Yeah,
because
it's
the
like-
shades
It
are
is
so...
strange.
Tan and brown.
There's such a spectrum of shades of people.
Exactly.
Unless you're talking to someone who is like 100% African from the darkest place where they're not wearing any clothes all day and they've developed all that melanin to protect themselves from the sun. You know, even the term...
He got into trouble with that, from the darkest place, naked all day. He got into trouble for saying that. But it's about melatonin. Not melatonin. It's about skin pigment. That's all it is. It's skin pigment. And yet we're taking skin pigment and we're turning it into something important, something significant, something that we evaluate people based on, something that gets you or doesn't get you into the Supreme Court. Melanin, thank you. That's the deciding. How much melanin do you have in the skin? Categorizes you. The whole thing is absurd. I mean, and it comes from the days of slavery and bigotry and Jim Crow laws, and we should be bigger than that and better than that and more grown up than that and more rational than that.
You know, even the term black is weird. And when you use it for people that are literally my color, it becomes very strange.
Yeah.
You know,
This is true.
a voice of
So anyway, they got into big trouble for that one. You can probably see why, even though, you know, they're absolutely right. And again, I get the sensitivity of people who are discriminated against because of the color of their skin. So they make the color of their skin a big deal because they've been discriminated based on that their whole life. But the rest of us, it's just inexcusable. It's logically absurd to place a percept about color, about skin pigmentation, as your standard for evaluating people. It's racist. And it's despicable. It's despicable when Joe Biden does it. It's despicable when the students at Georgetown do it. It's despicable when Whoopi does it. Whoopi only counts racism when it affects black versus white. Well, it turns out that other people have different views of racism, Whoopi, and she's suffering the consequences of that. Now, there's a sense in which Whoopi Goldberg is right. Since there isn't such a thing as race, it's a made-up thing. And Nazis were anti-Jewish. They hated Jews. They killed Jews. They slaughtered Jews. They also hated blacks. If there were more blacks in the environment, they would have slaughtered them too. They hated gypsies. They killed gypsies left and right. But, you know, these arguments about a concept that has ultimately no legitimacy is horrific. And the more we emphasize it, the more we get away from Martin Luther King's vision of a colorblind society, the more we get away from a society of individualists, the more we get away from intermarriage, which is, I think, the best thing that's happening in the world today, the rise of intermarriage. So Joel says, you're an actually light brown skinned people with slightly black facial features are classified as black over here. It wasn't always like this. I know it wasn't. But it's the trend in Brazil right now. Again, copying the US. Brazil was better than the US with regard to this, I think, in the past. And people are copying the US. We're becoming more racist, not less racist. More focused on this. And again, you're getting it from the right, from people like Richard who want to make a big deal out of group differences. This is what's important in life. And you're getting it from the left. Black Lives Matter. We got to elect a black woman to the Supreme Court. I mean, what matters is our genetic makeup, and that matters almost entirely for our health, not for anything else. It doesn't determine our moral character. It doesn't determine our productivity. It doesn't determine the choices we make, the kind of persons we are. It determines elements of our intelligence, but even there, I don't think the most important ones. And there's just no such thing as race in genetics. There's lineage, there's a place where you came from, and if you do a 23andMe, you'll find that you come from a lot of different places. A lot of different places. All right. There's no use for the concept, even if you could somehow vaguely define it. There's no use for it. It applies to nothing. It means nothing. And cognitively, what's the use of it? What do you use it for? What do you do with it? Nothing. All right. It really is. I mean, one of the things that discourages me more than anything in this world is the rise of racism and the fact that I have people who in the chat who follow me who are racists. And you guys have no clue how low I think these views are, how despicable they really are. I mean, there's a joke. If you're English, you're from a group that hasn't changed substantially over 5,000 years. I mean, that's absurd and completely not true, given the Viking invasion, the Norman invasion, the Roman invasion. Are those all the same people? Are they exactly the same? I mean, I guess they're all originally, culturally, language-wise at least, they're all from the steppes of Ukraine. But what are we talking about here? Complete nonsense. Think about how many invasions went on into England. And then think about how many invasions went on into the countries that invaded England. And think about how mixed up all those genes are and how mixed up the genes of the English really are. I mean, well, they haven't been pure not since 1066. They haven't been pure from long before that because the Romans invaded them. And the Romans certainly weren't English. They were Italians, what we call today Italians, right? I mean, the whole thing is stupid. If you know anything about history, you know that these conquests constantly, the Normans didn't inbreed with the natives. And the thing is that people care about this stuff. They follow it, they track it, because they get pride in their genetic makeup. They get pride in their purity of genes. It really is unbelievable. And if you follow human migration, if you follow human history, particularly ancient human migration, ancient human history, if you look at the patterns of languages and how they spread and where they went, it's pretty amazing how much migration there was, how much intermarriage there was, particularly males marrying women from outside of their communities. And how this all spread. I mean, the same people who ultimately landed up in Germany and England and Northern Europe and as far as Galatia are the same people who landed up in Turkey and influenced the language of there before the Turks arrived. before the Turks, the original inhabitants of Turkey. It's the same people who were the ancient Greeks. It's the original people, same people who then migrated to northern India and to Iran. And you therefore can find similarities in language between the Iranians, the northern Indians, the Germans, the ancient Greeks, the Romantic languages. And what's so pure about not mixing your genes? I mean, the whole concept of purity is pretty disgusting when applied to something like that. Why purity is associated with something good? Why is it good not to mix your genes? And then we also have Neanderthal DNA. So we're not pure at all. We've got that awful Neanderthal stuff in us. Yeah, mixing one's genes is actually very healthy. All right. So, I think most of you followed the show for the last few years, know where I stand on the issue of racism. I consider any referent to whites and blacks and browns and treating people differently based on these accidental attributes as despicable, racist, insulting. I don't care if it comes from the left. I don't care if it comes from the right. I don't care if it comes from the middle. All of it is horrible and should be trashed. Should be trashed. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to cover. I thought this was just funny, sad. Okay. So the ADL, this is with regard to the Whoopi Goldberg story, and then I'll go to questions. And we're way behind on the Super Chat. I don't know if it's because of the topic and you guys are uncomfortable with the topic or whatever, but we're way behind on the Super Chat. So we're only at about $100. We have $500 to raise. Don't make this the first time we haven't raised $600 in a long time. Anyway, here's the story that relates to the Whoopi Goldberg story. This is about the Anti-Defamation League. The Anti-Defamation League's mission is to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment for all. So it's an anti-racism, particularly anti-Semitism, organization. Anyway, because of the Whoopi Goldberg thing, they have changed their definition of racism. So they used to have a definition of racism. It's very similar to what they changed it to now. But a few years ago, they changed the definition of racism to the following. This is a few years ago. And you can see the impact here. The definition of racism, the old new definition of racism is the marginalization and or oppression of people of color based on a socially constructed racial hierarchy that privileges white people. Now, this is a Jewish organization. They are basically saying in that definition of racism that being anti-Jewish is not a racist. They're basically in that definition agreeing with Whoopi Goldberg. It's a definition that is completely out of kind of critical race theory. It's all about people of color. It's only defining race in terms of color of skin. And it excludes the one group that they supposedly are supposed to be defending. In response to criticism of the definition, the president of the ADL says, ADL updated a definition to reflect that racism in the United States manifests in broad and systematic ways, systemic racism, right? And to explicitly acknowledge the targeting of people of color, among many others, but it doesn't include many others, the definition, by the white supremacist extremists we have tracked for decades. But that's not what the definition says. It has no white supremacists in it, and it has, among many others, not included. So let's read it again. The marginalization and or oppression of people of color, only color, based on a socially constructed racial hierarchy that privileges white people, not certain types of white people, not white supremacists, but white people. That is not a good definition of racism. Raymond, thank you. Really appreciate that. That's very generous. Raymond just got us a little closer. So they quickly changed their definition of racism. It is now defined as, quote, racism occurs when individuals or institutions show more favorable evaluation or treatment of an individual or group based on race or ethnicity. That's racism. Treating somebody based on his race or ethnicity, not based on his character, his qualifications. I wonder if now, when they read this new definition that they have just adopted the ADL, if they'll recognize the fact that Joe Biden is acting in a racist way when saying that he will only nominate a black woman to the Supreme Court. Isn't that, right, marginalization or oppression of people? Isn't that institutions show more favorable evaluation or treatment of an individual group based on race or ethnicity? Isn't he in a catch-22 there? Right. That's the right definition of racism. But by that definition, Joe Biden is committing racism. Previous definition excluded attacks on Jews as racism. The president of the ADL, when trying to explain why they didn't like the old new definition, he says, while this is true, this new frame narrowed the meaning in other ways, and by being so narrow, the resulting definition was incomplete, rendering it ineffective and therefore unacceptable. It's true, it's just not the whole truth. It alienated many people who did not see their own experience encompassed in this definition, including many in the Jewish community. Well, of course, it completely ruled out the Jewish community. So the definition of the ADL now is, occurs when individuals and institutions show more favorable evaluation or treatment of individual or group based on race and ethnicity. That's a good definition. A little wordy, but that's basically a good definition. And how long will it last? I don't think it'll last very long on the ADL because, God, people are going to be upset at that. Oh, God, are they going to be upset at it? All right, the old definition, by the way, the old new definition, by the way, also meant that blacks could not be racist, that people from, other than whites, nobody could be racist. Because racism was categorized in a way that defined the ideology that placed whites on top. And any ideology that places a different hierarchy is not a racist ideology. The new definition makes clear that anybody can be a racist. Anybody can be a racist. So we'll see now how this is going to come under attack by the CRT types, by all kinds of people who are going to do this. By the old new definition, Asians couldn't be racist, for example. By this definition, yeah, they can be. The Japanese are pretty racist. Not all Japanese. Some Japanese are pretty racist. The Chinese are pretty racist. Some of them. In a sense of looking at other people and denouncing them. And you should see how some in China treat the blacks that have moved to China. There's quite a large black population in Guangzhou, in southern China, the area that was booming that came from Africa. And they've been treated pretty badly. There's racism in China. Turns out, racism is about treating people badly because of the features of their group, their race or their ethnicity. And anybody in that category, in that sense, anybody with any features can be a racist. All right, let's do some super chat. Let me remind you all again, we're at $240 approximately. We've got 360 to go. We got $100 from Raymond. Thank you, Raymond, again. That's very generous. Maybe we can get another few people to do $100 and we can make our $600 pretty quickly. But in the meantime, let's go for some $20 questions. Adam Reed says, I don't normally repost from a professor of Islam at Fuller, but rationing healthcare by race is something to notice. Your comment, yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable that in many places around the United States, they were rationing care for COVID based on race, with the idea that whites are privileged, whites whites are more likely to recover from COVID than blacks and Hispanics, I think. And as a consequence, they were rationing it based on race. But much more important is your age. Much more important is whether you're overweight, whether you have other pre-existing conditions. Those are the important ones. Those are the important features. The color of your skin is unimportant to this. So O00ANIX00O. And the only reason I read his name is, or her name, is out of respect because they just gave $50. They say, please improve our family Monopoly game time. All right, this is how you can take Monopoly to the next level and make it just better, more based on skill, more exciting. Yeah, more based on skill. That's the important part. Take a big chunk of the element of luck out of it. So the basic principle of this, everything is the same in the sense that everybody gets a certain amount of money, and you start off with nobody owning any properties. But in normal where you play Monopoly, now you start going around the board, and if you happen to land on a particular thing, and if you have the money, you can buy that property, and you accumulate properties by chance. You accumulate properties by the roll of the dice. That's chance. And that's not how, under capitalism, you accumulate properties. Under capitalism, you choose the properties, and you go out and you bid for them, and you try to buy them. So why not bring that to Monopoly? Now, this is what my high school friends and I discovered. We used to, on rainy days, we used to get together and just play Monopoly, and we figured, this is stupid, this is luck. Why don't we, and I can't remember who came up with this idea, but it's a brilliant idea. Why don't we auction the properties up front? And now you can strategize. You can strategize about which properties you want to buy, how much you're willing to pay for them. How much are you willing to bid against somebody else to prevent them from getting a particular property? Now you can develop real strategies of bidding, and you can develop real strategies of which properties do you want to be, where do you want to be on the board, which combinations of properties, what are the odds of landing on this and this, how much money do you want to put on the properties versus wait to buy hotels and houses and hotels. You can then add, of course, the whole concept of trading. So once all the bidding is done and everybody has their properties, now the bidding starts, which is the most fun part. The auction is fantastic, and then the bidding, like I'll give you 2 of these for 1 of those, and you try to form sets. And then only after all the trading is done and all the bidding is done and everybody has all their properties, now you start rolling the dice. And you start going around, getting $200 and building houses. And now the luck plays into who you drop on. But by this point, who's going to win is almost certainly determined by who bought the best properties and then kept enough money to be able to buy homes and hotels to charge you rent for. So that is my improvement of monopoly. Thanks for asking. Hopefully, you'll have to let me know, right? All right, let's look at some of these that have to do with us, with the topic today. I'm looking for ones that have to do with topics, with the topic. Andrew says, do you think that people innocently confuse racism with clumsily using words in extemporaneous discussion on racial subjects? I think there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of innocence. There's particularly in a hyperly racially charged world where there are words you can use, the words that you can't use, the races you can identify, the races you can't identify. Everybody has their own definitions and their own concepts. And so, yes, I think there are people who are innocent. But I don't think everybody's innocent. I think people are tribal. Many people are tribal. I think Ragnar of the Desert, thank you. $200, that gets us very close to 600. Thank you, Ragnar. It's great to see you here again. It's tribal affiliation. It's their own inferiority complex, usually. But I belong to a really smart group. It's why people hate Jews. Why do really intelligent people, smart, intelligent people, hate Jews? Well, because it's an easy explanation for their own troubles, for their own problems. Why did Germany do so poorly in World War I? Why did Germany is beaten economically by the English and the Americans? Well, it can't be because of anything the Germans did. It must be because of the other. It's always easy to define an other group, a group out there, to blame than to admit your own failure and your own problems. It's much easier then to solve the problem, killing them all, getting rid of them, and then the problem is solved. So I think the whole issue is an issue that comes from confusion and comes from disillusionment and comes from failure, comes from an inferiority complex. And people need to blame somebody, need some excuse. I mean, you saw that in America with Trump. It's not your fault that the country's going to hell. It's those other people. It's the Mexicans, it's the immigrants, it's the Chinese, it's the elites. It's not your fault. You're good people. Everything you do is great. If only the immigrants didn't come across the border, if only we didn't trade with China, America would be great again. I said this from 2016 on. It's the same kind of trope. The same kind of finding another, the other, to blame. Right? To blame for your problems. And smart people are quite willing to engage in self-delusion. Quite willing to engage in self-delusion. Landon says, the race rant is a great clip, great job. Wish you had more on Super Chat. You have to speed up the delivery if you want more viral short clips. I don't know. Yeah, I know, but the viral short clips will just have to come from Action Jackson's genius in finding 1 minute segments where I make something provocative that makes any sense. King Prince asks, what's the difference between favoring members of your family, clan, because they share blood with you, and favoring members of your ethnicity because they are more distantly share blood with you? None. I mean, I don't think you should favor members of your clan or your family for that matter because they share blood with you. I'm not for favoring. I wouldn't hire a cousin of mine because he was a cousin of mine. I wouldn't hire my son because he was my son. I would hire them only if they were fully qualified. The only reason you would hire somebody in your family is because you know them well. And you developed a certain level of trust with them because of that knowledge of them. And even then, I wouldn't hire them if they were not as good as the alternatives. Of my clan, I would never hire somebody from my clan. My clan can go to hell. I don't care about my clan. I don't know what my clan is. I wouldn't hire a first cousin. I don't know my first cousins. I barely know my first cousins. Some of them are nice. Some of them I don't know. And I don't care. I mean, this glorification of a family, particularly beyond the core nuclear family, is the same phenomena that racism is a part of. And part of civilization is breaking away from that. And part of the beauty of America is that Americans, when they immigrated here in the 17th, 18th, 19th century, they left family behind. Tribal societies are primitive societies. Tribalism is barbaric and primitive. People who stick to clans are the mafia. And it's a mafia. It's barbaric and primitive. And should be, and to a large extent, is destroyed and destructive. I don't hire Jews because I'm a Jew. I don't hire Ashkenazi Jews because I'm an Ashkenazi Jew. It's barbaric, primitive, and a failed strategy. If the one thing America has taught us is that tribalism is primitive. If one thing America has taught us is that mixing it up, all kinds of cultures, from all kinds of places, under the principle of individualism, is the superior alternative. It beats everybody. The melting pot is better than anybody else, anything else out there. But no, tribalism is barbaric and primitive. There's a reason that the evolution towards civilization is an evolution, cultural evolution, away from tribalism. First to nation, and then to individual. But it's away. And even Christianity, to the sense that Christianity is an improvement over what came before it in some areas. It's that it's universal, not tribal, not clannish, but universal. And in that sense, the universal value of an individual, that is the only value that Christianity contributed to the world. It's a huge step forward. And to me, it's shocking that people want to return to a pre-Christian, pre-Greek, barbaric and primitive form of tribalism. What is the Enlightenment if a rejection of tribalism? And that's what the philosophy, at least as I understand it, my philosophy is all about. It's about the value of the individual, the value of the individual mind. Not about what family you belong to, what clan you belong to, what tribe you belong to, which are all remnants of ancient primitive ideas that did not bring us the Industrial Revolution, that did not bring us wealth and prosperity, that did not bring us life extension. So King Prince says, if your first son was born, you walked into the hospital and saw he was a different race to you, and so you weren't father and didn't share blood. Share blood, God. Would you love him as much? Most people wouldn't. You mean adoptive parents don't love their babies? Should I, given that we never know, right, if as a man, whether the baby's really yours or not, should everybody do a genetic test? What happens with fathers who raise a child, love the child, love the child fully. And then when the child is 20 or something, discover that the child is not theirs. They do a gene test and they discover it wasn't theirs. Did they not really love him when they didn't have that mystical bond of blood? I mean, if the child wasn't mine, I'd felt betrayed and being deceived by my wife. That would be my main concern. And the child's not mine in some sense, and I've been deceived to think it was. That would be the conversation. But many couples use surrogates. Many couples use other people's sperm. Do those parents not love the child as much? Really? Where does this, I mean, really, I'm really shocked. I'm really shocked. We're in the 21st century. And you talk to me about blood? I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't understand it. Blood is what the Nazis talked about. Blood is what tribes talked about 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. Blood and iron is what we fought for, right? Blood and soil. The whole process of civilization is getting rid of that. It's about treating people as individuals. It's about loving people and caring about people because of what they are, who they are, and what they made of themselves. And it's just, I'm truly shocked. I'm not making this up. I'm not acting, pretending. I find it mind-boggling that nobody's learned anything from the 20th century, from the racism of the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. And that nobody has learned from the amazing phenomena of America, of the melting pot, of the success of individualism, and that there's such a desire among Americans to abandon individualism for the sake of, I understand religious people, I understand, I mean, it's vague to understand, but you know, yes, this is expressed in the national conservatives, it's expressed in all of you. It's just disappointing, and it's disappointing in the disappointment, in a sense, in the state of the human race. So you have contributed to making me less optimistic today. Let's see. Bree says, I know 3 friends who were murdered by black men, and a black man who murdered someone, all separate instances. I don't discriminate in hiring, good, but I do take precautions around black people who I consider suspicious. I don't think that's racist. I think you take information into account in a particular context. If you don't discriminate in hiring, but you know, if you're in a shady neighborhood, most crimes are committed by, or disproportionate percent of crime are committed by people with dark skin. Taking this skin color into account when you're alone in an alley makes all the sense in the world. That's not racism. If you can separate that from then, when you're treating people as individuals, not judging them as individuals based on the color of their skin. In a dark alley, you're not treating somebody as an individual. There's no individual there. There's nothing there. You're in a state of lack of any kind of knowledge. All right. Michael says, I think race does exist. I just don't think racial categories are particularly tight, and the individual is all that matters. Well, if the individual is all that matters, why do you need racial categories? But black males between the age of 18 and 24 make up 3% of the population, 96% of the NBA. True. So that's not race. That's a fact. And because the fact is there are lots of black people, and if you go to Africa, you can see them, who can't play in the NBA. They're short. They're pygmies in Africa, particularly short. They're short. So are those the same race as LeBron James? The same race? I mean, isn't it true that what happened is I don't know, but the slaves who were brought here, first of all, there's a certain aspect of the weaker ones died, and they were chosen based on their physical ability. So blacks in America tend to be more athletic because they were self-selected in some way when they came here. But does that make them the same race as Africans who cannot play basketball for the life of them? It's true that Kenyans and Ugandans are the best long-distance runners in the world. And it has to do with the genes, partially. They've got relatively light skeletal structures. It has to do with the fact that they, many of them are born and trained in high elevations. And it has to do with a commitment to excellence and wanting to win as individuals. But are they the same race as blacks who sprint well but don't run long distances well? Or Nigerian blacks that are becoming doctors and physicists and scientists? And what does race mean? If the color of the skin determines it, then, or is it whether you can play basketball or play soccer or be a long distance runner? So, no, sorry, I don't buy it. Don't buy it. Charlie says, I can't sponsor a $1,000 show, but you should do a show on Imperial Japan and how religion, racism, and tribalism contribute to make them so barbaric during World War II. Yes, very barbaric during World War II. And the only reason they stopped that is because they were crushed. That form of barbarism was eviscerated. And since then, what the Constitution that the Americans forced the Japanese to adopt and the culture and the economy that the Americans kind of imposed on them have made Japan a much more individualistic culture, still too collectivistic, still too tribal, but much more individualistic. And that the result of that is their economic success and their success as a country over the last few decades. Colt says, thank you for saying something nice. My faith anyway, I've been a staunch opponent of racism, but I've kind of just given up because whenever I tell people race doesn't matter, they just told me to shut up. It makes me pessimistic. Yes, I know. I feel just like you, Colt. I don't really want to talk about this topic, not because I don't have something to say about it, not because I don't believe strongly in it, not because I don't want to change some minds about it, but because every time I raise it, I'm so disappointed in people's response about it. King Prince is still going after this topic in the his babies are still going after that. There's zero evidence to suggest that fathers who are not genetically related to their babies treat them worse than fathers that are genetically related to their babies. It just doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist, and it's just not true. And look at how many fathers who are related genetically to their children abuse them and treat them awfully, in spite of the fact that they have the relationships. All right, let's see. Let's look for other $20 questions. Only $20 questions now. We have reached 600 with 625, so only $20 questions going forward. And let's see, Ali asks, hi, Yaron, are you going to talk about Jordan Peterson's Christianity reflecting in the podcast where he mentions that the Bible is the first book in Western civilization? Yes, I was planning to talk about that. I will. I just didn't want to do a series of shows on Jordan Peterson, but I will definitely use that clip in a future show, probably this weekend, to discuss just his whole conception of truth, his whole conception of concepts, and then I think the nonsense he says about the Bible. And I'm not even going to get into the Bible stories where I think he's really wrong. Michael says, the reason Goldwater lost is because JFK had just been assassinated and Johnson had been sworn in. The country wasn't ready to have 3 different presidents within a year. It had nothing to do with the rejection of free market. Well, that's not how anybody else interpreted it. It was because he was a hawk on foreign policy with the Russians, the atom bomb exploding commercial, and because he was pro-free markets. That's how everybody interpreted it. And indeed, he was wiped out. Indeed, in the next election, they ran Nixon. Nothing. Nobody. Pragmatist. Zero. Certainly not a free market guy. Certainly not a tough on the Soviets guy. Stepfathers, you look at that, if you control, I bet you, so he says, stepfathers kill their children sometimes like 100 times more often per capita than real biological fathers. First of all, I'm not sure that's true. You'd have to actually look at the data. And then, if you control for all kinds of things like, the socioeconomics of it, how many times was the woman married, how many times is the man married, what exactly is going on in those relationships, I bet you those numbers plummet dramatically once you control for the factors that are important to control for. Statistics are tricky, and when they're used by amateurs, very dangerous things. But you take couples where the wife is artificially inseminated by another man's sperm, and you tell me the father is not as loving to that child as any father whose biological thing is. It just doesn't happen. Plus, granted, people are not that rational. What can I say? The process of civilization is the process of rationality becoming more and more important in people's lives. And that is the process of the diminishing of blood, the diminishing of clan, the diminishing of tribalism, and the elevation of individual rational judgment. And that's a process that is not being completed. And it's not being completed partially. You can see that by the fact that socialism is so prevalent. All right. Let's see. PVM Corp, not PMV Corp, PVM Corp. Capitalism is regards to planned adolescence and issues regarding national security, causing harm to quality of life in common person in pursuit of profit over quality. Oh, God. I mean, there's no evidence of a problem with planned obsolescence. Planned obsolescence would be competed away by somebody who, if people cared about it, by somebody who put forward a product that lasted longer and advertised that. And then indeed, to some extent, happened. Whether it was planned obsolescence or just shoddy production, the fact is the U.S. automakers in the 1970s built lousy cars that didn't survive for very long. And you had to replace after, I don't know, less than 100,000 miles. Then came the Japanese. And Japanese cars could run 200, 300, 400,000 miles. And who won that battle? Well, the Japanese cars did. And if not for the government helping American automakers over and over and over again, they would have been wiped out completely. So planned obsolescence might be a strategy for some companies, but it would be competed out of existence by better companies. Now, does Apple have planned obsolescence for this? No. But the fact is, we all replace our iPhones all the time. Some people I know have old iPhones that still run. Now, is planned obsolescence the fact that the most modern operating system doesn't work in an old machine? Sure. But that's not planned obsolescence. That's just the fact that a modern operating system needs certain abilities and qualities in a computer that the old machines don't have. It's how we advance. So planned obsolescence is a fiction. And to the extent that it's ever been tried, it is competed away very quickly. Now, I don't know exactly what you mean by national security causing harm to quality of life. It certainly does when we're drafted into military and go fight wars that we shouldn't be fighting. But on the other hand, having an army and having national security protects our ability to produce and to build and create and to make stuff free of crazy people from overseas attacking us, people who hate us attacking us. So, the question wasn't perfectly articulated, but maybe you can ask a follow-up and explain exactly what you want. Ashton says, racism is the lowest form of collectivism. That is Ayn Rand. You can add to that tribalism. You can add to that clanism. And not only are they the lowest forms of collectivism, but they're also failures. They also don't survive from a cultural evolution perspective. They just get competed away, as will the current popularity of tribalism. It will be competed away. It will not last. It might last decades. It might last 100 years, but it will not last. The destiny of humanity is not tribalism. The destiny of humanity is individualism. You need a nation state to protect the individual, and that's its only function. Its only function. Not to define a collective, not to build walls, but to protect the individual. That's it. All right, some under $20 questions. Landon asks, former web marketing guy checking in. Short videos are a small investment of time from viewers, and they're more likely to share. The key is convert the gotcha videos into subscribers. Good luck. I mean, the issue with short videos here is that we've done 3-minute videos and 5-minute videos and 10-minute videos and we've released them as regular short videos. And those haven't done that much. I mean, I think they've contributed. I think they've helped. It's all been good. None of them really went viral. A few of them did really very well. The one that with, what's his name, the comedian about New York, did very well. But none of them just took off. The thing about this is it's a separate channel kind of feature on YouTube. It's 1-minute videos. You can't make them longer. And people just flip through. It's like it's YouTube's response to TikTok. And this is just taken off. Whatever we're doing there is just taken off in a way that nothing else is taken off. And it is translating into subscribers. And that's the great thing. We're getting hundreds of subscribers. And that's fantastic. Yeah, the episode with Seinfeld, that I did a show on Seinfeld's attitude towards New York. Florida Nick writes, have you ever thought about having a like goal for the live show? I think 150 would be a good starting point. Yeah, don't forget to like the show before you leave if you like the show. If you support the show, if you think the show's good, if you want to see the show succeed, please like it. It's easy. You just press a button over there on the video. And it helps the algorithms. It really, really helps the algorithms. So have I thought of doing a goal? I have, and I've done goals. We've done 300 likes goals. I think it was a 3-hour show to get to the 300 likes. But we have done like goal shows, and they've done quite well. It's just not as important as money. So, and usually they're correlated. Shows where we raise a lot of money also get a lot of likes. But we shouldn't have 124 likes right now. We should have 170 likes right now because there are 172 people watching live right now. Now, I know some of you don't like the show because I'm anti-racism, but there's got to be a lot of you who liked at least an aspect of it. God, sorry, I'm reading stuff that King Prince is writing here, and he doesn't have a clue. He doesn't know anything about the world. And this is what happens to to people, tribalists. They don't understand the world. They have no conception of it. I mean, to view China as cohesive and and tribal it shows that you don't know anything about China. Nothing. I mean, God. Jennifer writes, the people I love the most, my husband, my best friend, etc., I am not blood related to. Blood related means nothing. I agree with Jennifer completely. My best friends are not blood related. I am much more likely to exert significant effort to help and to contribute to the lives of my best friends than I am to my cousins, or even my parents, or almost every family member I have. I mean, blood doesn't get more barbaric than that. Michael asks, this amount of rabid non-logic is what turned Germany, the land of poets and philosophers, into a slaughterhouse. Absolutely. Oh, Frank, $50. Thank you, Frank. This is great. Ayn Rand prided herself on clearly seeing the world. Isn't that the lesson against the fog of racism and other status nonsense? Absolutely. And clearly seeing the world means understanding the roles of ideas in history and understanding that ideas impact individuals. And then the role of culture in history, and the role of individuals and ideas in shaping culture, and race, and ethnicity, and all these things are just that's a great way to think about it, Frank. It just is a way to destroy that clarity. It's to create a fog, a cognitive fog. These are not clearly defined concepts. They cannot be, and they have no purpose. And they orient one's consciousness towards the wrong solutions, the wrong problems, and ultimately towards decay. And this is exactly the point. Civilization is the process of achieving that clarity, which only a respect for reason and individualism can do. Thank you, Frank. Micah says, Jordan Peterson is actually insane. He's a neurotic Kantian, which is why he looks so tense and miserable all the time. He looks tense and miserable all the time because he's tense and miserable. I don't think he's insane. I don't agree with him. That doesn't make him insane. Blackout asks, if one's perception of morality on the same axiomatic level as one's perception of free will? No, not at all. Morality is derived. Morality is discovered. Morality requires the use of free will to engage with the world and figure out. Morality is far, far from axiomatic. It requires that one make certain choices, the choice to live. It requires then that one investigates scientifically what the choice to live requires, what life requires. And then pursue life by pursuing those values and virtues that make life possible, that make flourishing life possible. So, not at all. Morality is something. It's a derivative. It's a derivative, and it requires real thinking, and real evaluating, and real observation of reality. It's a science. Think of it as compared to the immediacy of perception versus abstract science. Right? Understanding the forces of nature, of the things that one perceives. Understanding the forces of nature is like morality. It's an understanding of the world. All right, Adam is here. Top places that focus on race: government, corporate boardrooms, and prisons. That should speak volumes of the quality of that way of thinking. Absolutely. And of course, university, don't forget universities. And that says it all. Because it all comes from universities, at least today. But yet, it's all about appeasing our intellectuals. And our intellectuals are the people really pushing race. Stephen says, I recently said to myself when filling out a form, I don't identify as white. Do you decline to answer all those form questions? Why are they on there? Yes, I decline all those form questions. I don't know if I've told this story before. I don't know if you've heard it, Stephen. But when my son was born, my first son was born, a nurse came in like a few hours after the birth, or a day, probably a day or two after, a day after the birth. And she said, I need to fill out the birth certificate, name and so on. And so we gave her the information. And she says, she's filling out the form, and she says, race. And I literally looked at her, and she was a black nurse. I literally looked at her and said, what is this, Nazi Germany? What do you mean race? I don't know. And she said, I have to fill out race. The government requires it. It's in the document. In your birth certificate, it says race. And I said, I don't know what is racist. You write whatever you want. And she said, no, you have to tell me. I can't give you a birth certificate. So I can't remember what we put in there. Caucasian, Asian, something. I don't know, right? Because while I am, I don't know how you want to evaluate these things, but ethnically, if you go far back enough, most of my ancestors were European. My wife's are not. Hers are from all over the place. Asia, Central Asia, Northern Africa. I mean, it's barbaric. And it's why the question is is all because of politics. And it's all because of racism. It all goes back to racism, and then the attempt to fix racism by reverse racism, which is just racism. So it's all disgusting. So what I do when I get to that form is I leave it blank. I leave it blank in the census where you're supposed to fill in everything. And then they keep coming back and knocking on my door. And I say, I won't fill it out. I just won't fill it out. Call the police. I'm not filling out what race I am. It is a disgusting question, and I won't play into your racist game. I will not be part of Nazi Germany. Or, but I won't even put it other because still the same game. They shouldn't be asking the question. I won't fill it out. Yeah, if there's a place to fill in, you can put human. That's fine. I just leave it blank. Bonnie says, what's your definition of the term racist? Racist is somebody who judges another person based on their ethnic origin or the color of their skin or some immutable characteristic. That's what racism is. Judging another person based on these kind of issues. And I agree with Ayn Rand. It is the lowest form of collectivism. And I think you all know what I think of collectivism. And this is the lowest form of that. It's the worst. It's the darkest. It's the ugliest. Ronnie says, saw a headline this week about AOC claiming that corporate price gouging is fueling the high inflation we currently have. Please debunk this. Yeah, I mean, she said this. Elizabeth Warren is really pushing this. And I did a show on this. I don't know, about a week or two ago, debunking it. When Elizabeth Warren's saying, AOC's not an intellectual. She just mouths the stuff that the smarter kind of Elizabeth Warren presents. Elizabeth Warren is the more intellectual of the leftists, fascist. She's the dangerous one. I'm sure I'll do it again, but it's just I did a show on it. I don't want to repeat myself here, but basically it's complete and utter nonsense. There's just no basis for it. They don't understand economics. They don't understand how competition works. They don't understand how prices are set. And no economist thinks this. It's all political. It's all political. King Prince, I'll just say without repeating what you're writing, I'll just say, no, it's not true. Frank asks, so Spotify allegedly presents vaccine misinformation, but History Channel presents pseudoscience among science, ancient aliens. Why is media teaching us junk? Because it's not media, it's entertainment. It's entertainment. And why are you watching junk is the real question. But it really is, complete entertainment. It panders to a certain type of masses, certain type of person. That's it. All right, guys, almost 2 hours. Thank you. It was a great super chat, $770. You guys came through. Ragnar of the Desert, thank you. Really appreciate it. You, only because of you did we get across that $600 mark, so thank you. Thank you for everybody who contributed through the super chat. Thank you for all my monthly supporters. Don't forget you can contribute to Your Book Show monthly by going to youronbookshow.com/support, Patreon or Subscribestar. And you can contribute that way, and it's incredibly valuable. Don't forget to like the show before you leave. The algorithms make it, it really helps with algorithms, in other words. John Bull says, thank you for making the world a better place, one mind at a time. I certainly try, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that I'm failing with certain minds. But, you can only do what you can do. Some people are too thick to change. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here. I'll see you all on Saturday. There will be shows on Saturday and Sunday. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.